after I watched it, I kind of handed it over to him with this dead look on my face, like, I don't know you anymore.
The face of a broken young man who's seen tentacle porn.
きっと約束だよいつかまた同じ笑顔で
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the box, the Annie Chat box, of course. Welcome to episode 20. Count it! I am Cammie, and I'm going to be hosting today alongside our gentleman from overseas. His name is Drango. Say hi.
Hello everyone, I think this is actually the first time anyone's introduced me as Drango. It's always been Jonathan Joestar.
So he's Drango, aka Jonathan Joestar, aka John. He is man of many names, as well as most of us. If you want to get in contact with us, we are available at twitter.com/theanniechatbox. We're at anniechatmail@gmail.com. You can listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and SoundCloud. If you're feeling charitable at all, you can catch our Patreon at patreon.com/theanniechatbox. All right, John, how are you doing tonight? I'll just call you John for consistency.
I am doing very well. Got a nice drink besides me. Not my usual tea, though.
I am drinking tea for you tonight. I actually have chai tea in a warm mug right next to me, so that is totally fine. All right, so this topic was kind of put together at the last minute, but I think it works. It's episode 20, and our topic today is 20 years as an anime fan, more or less. So I approached John with this idea about talking about what it was like growing up as an anime fan in the 90s and upwards. Before the advent of socially embraced nerddom, Tumblr, and streaming sites, how did we develop as anime fans? How did we find access to this mysterious medium from overseas? So I will say personally that my interest in anime started when I saw Sailor Moon on Toonami on Cartoon Network when I was 7 years old. And the beast was awakened in me, and nothing was ever the same again. What was your first exposure to anime, John?
Technically, my first exposure, I'm not entirely sure how old I was, but I certainly didn't know what anime was at the time, and it was actually Street Fighter 2, the animated movie that my family rented from the video rental store, and we decided to watch it as a family while I was like, I keep saying 8 years old. This thing's happened when I was about 8 years old, but that's as good as a guess as I'm gonna get. And so yeah, suddenly watching this movie, and then suddenly Chun-Li naked in the shower with my parents completely unsure of how to react to this scene unfolding before them.
I feel like it's actually funny to me that you brought up video stores, because that's another thing that I absolutely remember with me being into anime when I was a kid. And we always used to go to this video store, Hollywood Video. And I remember wanting to find, I love Sailor Moon. Like you, I didn't really know what anime was. I was just like, oh man, I love Sailor Moon. I want more of like Sailor Moon and what this stuff is. And our video store had the 3 Sailor Moon films, which I checked out repeatedly throughout like the next 10 years. I was pretty selective as a child, and I would just kind of stick with what I liked. But at the same time, I think that saved me a little bit, because when I would check out the Sailor Moon VHSs at the time, they were in the foreign section. And I definitely recall like little me kind of perusing the foreign section in Hollywood Video, and I know there was some gory, there was some like sexual, like really, really dirty stuff. There was the hentai there was probably the crazy gore fest stuff, and thankfully I did not taint or disturb my poor little self by checking out something risky. Because back then, I feel like it was really just like, yeah, this is all that weird stuff from Japan. It's all like crazy and whatever. So they didn't put attention into filtering out between something that's like Sailor Moon, which, you know, especially back in the 90s too, some parents were still like, oh, there's too much nudity. But, you know, there's a line to be drawn between like Sailor Moon and Ninja Slayer, you know? So that was always kind of a fun adventure. Although I do think that Kiki's Delivery Service was in the children's section, but I actually never watched it as a kid. But I remember, you know, if I'd known it was anime at the time, I probably would have checked it out.
Yeah, it wasn't really until I was about 12 years old that I really started getting into anime and was like, oh, okay, this is something actually from Japan, and it's really neat. And that was around about when the Pokemon craze first hit the UK.
Oh, nice.
Pokemon, Digimon, and my best friend in high school kind of turned around and said, hey, there's these series that are on Cartoon Network. One's called Dragon Ball Z and another one's called Gundam Wing, and you should check them out because they're awesome. And Sailor Moon was also airing at the same time, but I kind of was like, that's for girls, so I'm not gonna watch it. There was a funny story involving that though, that attitude of mine. It was eventually, because Cartoon Network was digital TV, so you needed either cable or a satellite box to watch it, whereas we had 5 analog terrestrial channels, which was BBC, BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5. And ITV had a kids block for after school called CITV. And a little after all of this, suddenly CITV managed to get their hands on one particular series, and it was airing pretty much every day right as I would get home from school, about a little girl who had found a mysterious book in her father's library, opened it up, and let loose a whole deck of cards worth of mystical beings.
Yes!
And I fell in love with this series, and I ended up having the alarm set on my watch for 5 minutes before this series started, and if my watch was going off and I was not home, I would run. Because I had to get my fix of Cardcaptor Sakura every day that it was
Was it called Cardcaptor Sakura
No, it was
in
called
the
Cardcaptors.
UK broadcast? Okay, so was ours. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Did it have the cheesy like Cardcaptor Mystic Adventure? Oh yes, yes. Oh man. For anybody listening, go check out the Cardcaptors English dub opening. It is a product of its time. I will just say that.
But I love it. It's about the only thing that and Kiro's voice are the only things I still like about the dub since I came across the subs, which was also the first series I actively hunted the subs for, because I could never... they always got to a certain point and stopped and went back to the start, so I never saw all of it, and I was like, I know this isn't all of it. Where's the ending? I'm missing so much.
Yeah, did they end up adapting I don't actually know if Cardcaptors adapted the entire series. Just because like you, and like we said at this time before anime was streaming, and it was just dependent on TV channels. You just had to catch it when you could. So a lot of the shows actually that I watched in this time, I didn't watch chronologically or sometimes all the way through, because it was really just being able to catch it when I could. Interestingly enough.
Yeah, there certainly was that issue with it, and also being true to the original source movie.
That was a thing.
That was not necessarily enforced.
If anyone wants to have a huge laugh like I do, there's a YouTube channel called Sailor Moon Says that's fully dedicated to uploading just like the gold nuggets of the best and worst of the original English dub of the show. And it's really, really funny to go back and watch all of the seasons between Uranus and Neptune, who, as anybody who knows the actual original Japanese version, they are lovers, but in the dub, they were turned to cousins. And it is hilarious to watch these scenes now where, like, the characters are definitely being intimate, and they're just like, oh yeah, I feel the same way, cuz. And I'm like, cuz? Cuz? It's just ridiculous. And I think that, honestly, the prospect of making cousins seem that intimate was far more problematic than if they'd actually just introduced them as lovers. But, you know, they could have just gone with the close friends route if they really wanted to do that.
You've also just reminded me of a certain scene about Tomoyo, which, admittedly, the original scene in the anime, in the original Japanese dub, still doesn't make too much sense. But they tried to imply that Tomoyo had a crush on Sakura's brother instead, or Madison, rather. Madison is what they call that.
Yes, Madison. Yes.
Because there's this one scene where Tomoyo notices, what is it, Toya? Is that his name?
Toya.
Toya. Notices Toya's ears, and in the original Japanese line, it's something like, they had, he and Sakura have similar ears, and she kind of blushes over that she noticed that idea, noticed that detail. And they were like, well, we're not cutting this out because we want to hide. No, she doesn't have a crush on Sakura. She has a crush on Toya. So Toya has cute ears. Okay, let's go with that.
That's funny you mentioned that. And speaking again of more ways to reach anime, back then, I've always been an avid patron of the library. My dad's always like taken me to the library since I was a kid, so I've been there all the time. I was very frequently on the catalog. And the other way that I found access to anime was once I was like maybe like 12 or so, 11 or 12 or so, I started just looking up anything anime that I could possibly find in the library catalog. And that's also how I read a lot of early manga. And one of the earliest manga series that I found in the library was Cardcaptor Sakura. And I remember reading it in middle school, like just eating all of it up. And I remember the chapter. There's a chapter where Tomoyo is blushing over Toya. And then in the little like... not the speech bubbles, but there's just like an arrow and it's like additional text. It says that she was blushing because he reminds her of Sakura. So they're literally like, you know, they were pretty transparent about that somehow. They were like, it's because he reminds her of Sakura specifically. So yeah, that was always interesting. I actually found a lot of series within the library that I think nowadays, when I have streaming and I look at Crunchyroll's entire queue, there are a lot of shows that I'm like, I'll give it a pass because I have this huge volume to choose from. When I was a kid, it was whatever the library had, I would check out. And back when I was really into Magical Girls, I found that we had a DVD set at the library for the show called Wedding Peach. And Wedding Peach is not an exceptional series. It's very much a kind of Sailor Moon ripoff sort of thing. It's very, very cheesy. But I was 14 and I was like, I want pretty magical girls. So I totally watched it. And I have a weird nostalgia for that show now, even though I know it's garbage. I'm just like, but I remember watching the DVDs from the library when I was 14. Oh, man. Did you ever check out stuff at the library as well?
I don't remember ever finding any anime or manga in the library. Then again, I didn't really frequent the library for a very long period of time until I was already an adult, and it was only after I moved here that I actually started looking in the library and like, oh wait, they have manga in here. That's cool. Manga and anime were harder to find here. It wasn't until I was in college already, 16 to 18 years old,
Oh wow.
that I was actually at a point where I was near shops that actually stocked manga and anime and would start. That's when I actually started collecting, and DVDs were out by this point. And these things are awesome. They can carry 5 episodes, not just 3.
Like the VHS tapes.
Although, speaking of VHS tapes, one other memory of growing up an anime fan was discovering that after we got digital TV, that Sci-Fi Channel had a segment at like 1 a.m. On a certain day of the week. Like it was from 1 a.m. to 3 or 4 a.m.
Wow.
And they'll either show a movie or a couple of series, like an episode of a couple of episodes of a series or something. And I would set up my VHS VHS recorder to just record that night, and it actually kind of got to a point where my friends in school found out I was doing this, and I'd get people asking if they could borrow these VHSs from me. And
Nice.
you mentioning like the more adult anime that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
This segment was not for kids. It was at it was on at 1 a.m. for a reason. But my parents were none the wiser as to what they were showing. It wasn't all
So they let
adult.
you record it.
My parents let me record it. They actually helped me buy the VHSs to record these series because they were like, hey, something he's really into. Let's encourage him. And I will say, a lot of it was like Patleba, Ghost in the Shell, Akira.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay, but, like,
then
yeah.
there was suddenly Urotsuki Dojin, or Legend of the Demon Womb.
Oh my god. Well,
Which is a
to be
rather
fair, like,
notorious
how old were you at this
tentacle-
time when you were recording these?
14, 15?
Yeah, no, like I still think that, like, I mean, relative, I guess, because my brother, I think, was watching things like Princess Mononoke and Akira when he was that age. But, like, I would have been traumatized by both Ghost in the Shell and Akira at, like, 13, 14 years old. So definitely not necessarily for kids. And actually, I like that okay, so you also said that you ended up passing around a VHS with tentacle porn on it to your classmates.
Yeah,
Is this
that
true?
was one of them that was like, the one guy found out that was what was airing that night, and he ran up to me in the school and was like, dude, you must record the one that's on tonight, and you must let me borrow it as soon as you can. And I was like, okay, I was going to record it anyway, and I don't know what it's about, but sure. And
Oh my god.
after I watched it, I kind of handed it over to him with this dead look on my face, like, I don't know you anymore.
The face of a broken young man who's seen tentacle porn. Oh my god. I definitely don't have a story that raunchy, but let's see. I think the first Ghibli film I ever saw was Spirited Away, and that was rented by my mom's recommendation, so that wasn't one I actively checked out. But there was a point when Cartoon Network was playing, or no, not Cartoon Network. My dad had satellite TV growing up, so he had all these, like, niche channels and stuff, and he was like, Camille, they're playing like a Miyazaki month or something, and I was like, oh, cool, it's more movies like Spirited Away. Sure, record them. And the first movie that he recorded, and I think I was 14 at the time that this aired, was Pompoko. So I turn on this movie, and I see raccoons that can transform their giant tentacles into things. and I was a little shook. I was a little bit
I still have not
not
actually
necess-
seen that one, but that is one I was like, I need to find this movie and watch it because of the zaniness and
It's very, very, very zany. Yes, I would say so. Oh man. Let's just, I mean, geez, just speaking of how you talked about getting the VHS tapes and recording it, like we were dedicated fans, man. Like you had to get into hardware to preserve these things. And I think that was just, I think that was very, very true.
I have most of those recordings in my room.
Nice. Nice. The VHSs themselves?
Mm-hmm. And my VHS recorder. So I can watch
Wow.
them if I ever wanted to.
That's so nostalgic, man. I used to buy Sailor Moon VHSs on eBay once I discovered the wonders of eBay, and I was like, they have all this Sailor Moon, oh my god. So I would buy VHSs of it that I had for many years and watched a lot, but at one point when I was in college, my mom was just like, can I sell your Sailor Moon tapes to Goodwill? And I was like, fine, I guess, but now I'm still kind of sad. But that's okay. I could always buy it on DVD, I guess, if I ever really wanted to.
Although you just reminded me of something that happened after I started attending conventions, because Martian Success Nadesco, that was a series I found on VHS by chance in a comic shop before I went to college. And bought volume 1 of that, sort of on a whim. And I was like, oh, this series is awesome, man. I want to find out more of it. And I could never find it until I was in college and I started finding it on DVD. And then I had to buy volume 1 again on DVD. Because now there's 5 episodes per volume as opposed to 3. So I needed to get volume 1 for the extra 2 episodes on it, and then volume 2. And then I could not find any more of it beyond volume 2.
I hated that marketing of DVDs where like you'd have an entire series on like 6 DVDs, and it's like the shit was hard enough to find anyway, and then you'd end up with like a smattering of the episodes and not the full series. It was so jipping, man.
And,
like you'd have to spend so much money.
Yeah, and it bugged me for the longest time because I could not find it. And then I went to Tokunatsu, which is an anime festival I go to every year. Not a con. Not a con because it is not legally allowed to be called a con for
Interesting.
health and safety reasons.
Oh, yikes.
But it is a festival because it is outside intense. And it is intense. Sorry.
Puns. Puns.
But they have a bring and buy every year. And I just done dropping off a few bits and pieces I was willing to sell off this year. And was leaving the bring and buy area myself. That like there's a day where you drop everything off, and then the next day is when everything actually comes on sale. And as I'm walking out, I see someone walking towards the bring and buy room with the entire stack of the entire series of Nadesco on DVD, and I'm just like, wait, how much are you selling it for? I will buy it from you right now.
Nice.
And so now I have the full series of Martian Success and Nadesco on DVD, and as soon as I got home, marathon the entire thing. I was like, that was awesome.
I definitely appreciate the fact now that it is far easier to buy shows, not only necessarily just like on DVD, but like the entire show instead of just those little like small like little cases.
Box sets.
That was just
or even if
box
it's like
sets.
okay, this is the first half of the series, and then you got a second box for the second half of the series. Even that's fine with me. It's just so much easier and cheaper.
Oh my gosh, bless, yes. I have a random DVD. I have the first 4 episodes of Air on a DVD that I got from Get. that he bought at a con sometime again, and I'm like, I'm happy to have it. But again, it's like the fact that that DVD probably cost like $25, and you'd have to get like what 4 of them, I think, for air. It's like 12 or 13 episodes. That's just insane to me.
Yeah, like if you think I don't know, what would be a typical price for one of those half a series box sets?
For like a 25 episode series, so you're getting like the first
no, sometimes it is like 25 episodes and then another 25 episodes for a 50 episode series, which is
I feel like those would be around like $40 for like a half.
If people nowadays thinks, that's expensive, and then you gotta spend another $40 for the second half of the series, imagine paying 5 episodes a time, $20, $25, £20 UK.
Yeah,
each
it was
volume.
It was ridiculous.
That is the stuff we had to put up with after DVDs came out.
And it's like, or else, I actually don't know Crunchyroll's current subscription fee, but like even that, for the amount of volume of shows that they have to pay.
Oh, it's so cheap.
I think it's like, is it like $9.99 a month or like $5.99 a month? Yeah, like that's incredibly reasonable.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you might only watch the one series as is airing, but even that works out cheaper than. I mean, that's your prerogative, but
yeah, and
there's
I think
nothing
you can...
stopping you from going, oh, there's this series that is all completed. Let's just marathon the whole thing today. Oh, there's another series that I've now finished. Now that I finished that one, let's start on this one and finish it tomorrow. And then you can watch so much anime in the space of a month on that.
Exactly, and on multiple platforms, and the fact that, like, the example you brought up earlier, where if someone just wants to watch one show, then, like, they can still watch that one show and then cancel their subscription, and they'll only have paid, what, like, $6 to $10. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Honestly, the subscription is optional. You just are limited to a lower quality footage. You can
and ads, right? I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's still a lot of extra barriers for me being in the UK as opposed to in the US.
And that part really sucks. I guarantee you probably had higher priced DVDs back then too, just because of I don't know, rates and access. Who knows? Either way, back then, in the 90s and early 2000s, it was still this weird thing from Japan, so it did not come cheap by any means.
Whether anything made it to the UK, so basically it ended up being a double filter for what things got to the UK, because it had to be popular enough in Japan to warrant a translation in the first place to go to America, and then what was popular out of that stuff in America was what then came to the UK.
Oh, wow.
So
I had no clue about that.
There was so much that people were like, oh yeah, I remember this series. It was awesome. And I was like, I have never heard of it. What rock were you living under? I was in the UK and we never got it. Oh
no.
Poor you.
Oh no. Thankfully now you shouldn't have to worry about that too much, aside from maybe some regional barriers on stuff. Like, I don't know if there are some shows on Crunchyroll that you can't watch because you're in the UK. I'd hope not.
Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Super is on Crunchyroll, but not available to me in the UK.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. I'm sorry to hear that. Did you have any other points you wanted to bring up? If not, I'm going to run us through this really fun Tumblr post that we can talk about.
Other than there was a few charms from the 90s that I think people should hunt down and check out if you haven't. Because, like...
What would those be?
Cardcaptor, Martian Success in the Desco, Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star. These are some series that are near and dear to my heart, and if you haven't seen them, I think you should check them out.
And those were the ones again that warranted enough success to be dubbed and broadcast over.
Yeah,
over here,
these ones that actually made it on TV here. Nadesco didn't actually end up on TV, but the full series came out on DVD here in the UK. But that was the only one that didn't get broadcast, as far as I can remember.
I think another show that I ended up watching... another show I guess I'd add to your list, and this is purely nostalgia. It's not necessarily based on quality, but Inuyasha.
Inuyasha.
I spent so many nights up watching Inuyasha.
I never saw the entire series, but I did. After I discovered the internet and that you can download things off the internet in...
manners of ways.
Manners. People, please support the official release. I'm not encouraging piracy, but
back then when we didn't know what else we could do,
you did not have as easy access to things back then as you do nowadays. So that is my excuse, but it is just an excuse. So
all I'm saying is I tried all these other things. We tried video rentals, library, what was on TV, recording VHSs, man, and all the Sailor Moon I bought off of eBay. Another show that I definitely don't think I would have watched had it not been broadcast on Cartoon Network on Toonami's block is I actually watched a show called Tenchi Muyo when I was a kid.
That was also airing here, but I could never get into it for some reason.
I do not understand how that show got on Toonami, because it's literally like a really fan servicey like space harem. Like, what went through their minds being like, kids are gonna like this show? It was like, there's not even like that much action in it. It's mostly just like talking and like fan service gags. The only reason I liked it as a kid, I'll chalk it up to, is that there were some characters with some really like cute designs, and I was like, ooh, cute anime girls, this princess, she's pretty. And then there was her little sister with blue hair named Sasami, and she was super cute, and I loved her, and I like purely watched the show for that character.
I saw a couple of episodes of it, and I was like, I just have no clue what's going on. And
I don't know what localization teams were thinking would make it a sell. Actually, like, granted I can, because for older audiences, it was fun because it was fan servicey. Like, there was enough of that. But, like, I don't know why they decided to show it on Toonami.
It was definitely a hit and miss series. But
yeah,
some people seem to enjoy it enough to warrant it.
I've heard that the OVAs, there's, like, the original series is, like, a series of 6 OVA episodes or so. And that is more worth watching than the rest of it, because it got a billion spin-offs. But yeah, again, just like crazy, quirky things that I watched because I did not have access to anything else and I was just desperate for the medium. All right, I'm going to bring up this Tumblr post right now that I had seen called 2000s YouTube Anime Watching Aesthetic. And so this Tumblr post is a series of bullet points that I'm going to list, and I want to see if Drango resonates with any of these in the same way I do. And if need be, we will explain the context of each. Are you ready for it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the first point is, in all caps, Episode 10, Part 1 out of 3, English sub. Does that ring a bell to you? Like on YouTube?
Yes.
Watching streamed episodes that were 30 minutes long, but you couldn't upload more than, 15 minutes, so people had to split episodes into 3
It was about
parts.
10 minutes that you could upload at a time, which is why it was 3. Yeah. Yes.
Yep, Part 1 of 3, Part 2 of 3, and then you'd have
and then the
anguish
frustration
of,
in that you can't find Part 3 of 3. Part 2 of 3 is missing for some reason.
I think that was my favorite, was when 1 of 3 and 3 of 3 were available, but 2 of 3 is missing, and you're like, all of the context, where did it go? So-and-so died, they were just fine earlier. Okay, and then the next point is 240p quality. Please tell me you remember that, because I sure do.
Oh, yes.
I remember the pixelation.
And to think that 460p is considered low quality now. That was
oh my
the
gosh,
holy
spoiled
grail
children.
of quality at the time.
It really was. And then the next point says, the inevitable drop to 144p quality because you're streaming video in 2006. What did you expect?
So true. So true.
I remember that. It's like, no, why does it look even uglier now?
Buffer. Why won't you buffer?
Speaking of buffering, going on Gaia while your video buffers in another window. Do you remember Gaia Online? I totally had a Gaia
Online.
account.
That is still a thing, though.
I think my account still exists somewhere.
It does. I promise you it does. So does your Neopets account.
Oh god, my Neopets are all dead. Oh god. And then the next one says, no tabs, we kill the Windows XP taskbar like men, which I don't necessarily understand, but okay.
So your browser, you can have as many tabs open as you want, and it won't, well, for the most part, won't really cause a problem. Back then, you needed a new window for every
That's true.
different page you had open.
You could not have tabs up for part 1 of 3, part 2 of 3, and part 3 of 3.
But me?
Oh god.
No, you could not, and eventually those multiple windows, multiple instances of this one program running would slow down your computer, and if you had, and it would get to the point that you couldn't actually close them without going into Task Manager.
Bless Windows XP. That was my jam.
Windows ME for me for the longest time. I was
Oh.
one of the few that had to suffer with that operating system. Though I had fewer problems with ME than I ever did with Vista. Vista was the bane of my existence.
I heard Vista was so bad. I never had it, but I heard it was just terrible. Next one says OP with English translation at the bottom and Romanization at the top, but you can't read either because 80% of the time they had picked some curly font in a color that blends into the rest of the video.
Oh, yes. Yes. So true.
Oh my god. And following up that, subtitle fonts become absolutely unreadable at the inevitable quality drop no matter what color or font it's in.
At least the official translations always stuck to a standard font and selected colors that worked.
Okay, so this I appreciate. It says translators notes with the caret underscore caret sign or O underscore O semicolon sign. So like those just little stupid like Japanese emotion signs like wide eyes or the smiling face in the translator notes.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Translator notes. I missed those,
Yeah,
actually.
Right, that kind of gave a little bit of personality. It made you realize that it was an actual real life person that was translating it. And they probably were not doing it for pay. It was just a gig on their free time. Bless their
Translation
souls.
notes. Baka means stupid.
Oh, there is that. That's coming. The next point says, you were probably watching Naruto, Death Note, Full Metal Alchemist, Fruits Basket, Gurren Lagann, Ouran High School Host Club, Inuyasha, or The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya.
All of them.
Yep.
All of them.
Oh my god. The next one says, this video has been removed due to terms of use violation.
Oh, yep.
And you're just like, no! That's where part 2 of 3 went.
Fix.
Okay, and the last part, and you will appreciate this, as you mentioned it before. The next point says, just according to the Keikaku, translator's note, Keikaku means plan.
Yeah, when they randomly decided, you know what, they say this one word often enough, we're not going to bother translating it anymore, but here's a translation note of it. Why didn't you just do that in the first place? You translated it as well as not translate it.
That's the rise of, like, the anime motivational posters that people used to make with the black background and then the picture and, like, stupid text below it. And I remember seeing one with light saying, just according to the Keikaku, and then it says, note, Keikaku means plan. Okay, and then
That's probably,
this one's
that was probably the rise of weeb speak. where people would
Right.
just randomly say, "Oh, you're such a baka! Oh,
Databayo.
Databayo!"
This one's an extra, but I really appreciate it. It says subtitles that match the speaking character's color scheme, and trust me, from watching Magical Girl shows enough, that was such a thing.
Certain fan subbers still do that when it comes to like Pretty Cure or Precure.
That would be in style, because for me it was watching Tokyo Mew Mew, and it was that like Mint's subtitles were like a blue aqua color, Lettuce's subtitles were green, Ichigo's were like pink, so on. It was definitely something that I think they had fun with.
Also, Kamen Rider, they slightly stepping away from anime. Kamen Rider actually, certain series of that, they had in Kamen Rider W, they had the special font and different color text depending on who was talking or what was going on and what they were translating, and I always appreciated that in that sense. It's like the extra effort, and they put a lot of effort into making sure it was readable and stylized and worked, and I always appreciated it, that extra effort
Nice.
they went to. I kind of miss it.
Nice. What a time we lived in. I think that about wraps up our main topic. But again, I will just say, what a time we lived in. And to everybody else, like these younger fans that are coming into existence, you guys are very lucky. You
do
missed
not
a
know
lot
how
of...
good you have it.
Yeah, you missed a lot of weird, quirky shit as we tried to wade these waters of getting access to this cool new medium from Japan. Oh man, what a time. So going into that, John, I will let you take over for our review section this episode. What are we reviewing today?
Today, we are reviewing a series called Onihei. The synopsis of the series goes: the blade arts of the devil, tasked with striking down evils threatening a peaceful Edo, Heizo Hasagawa, upholding the role of chief officer protecting against crime and arson. In 1783, the heart of the Tenmei era, Hasagawa held the office of chief director of the department charged with sustaining safety in the region, suppressing the most vile of thieves and criminals, an individual largely feared, known as Devil Heizo, or Onihei. It is by Studio M2, and it is worth noting that this is a breakout series for a new studio. They've done nothing before this.
Yep. I also put in a little note in here. I tinged it pink, so that was my note in the doc saying that I could say this, I guess. So I did a little research, and Onihei Hankacho was originally a series of historical drama novels written in the 1960s by Shotaro Ikenami. Onihei has been adapted into several mediums already, including TV programs, a film, and a stage play, and most recently, the anime, which I thought was just an interesting point to bring up.
It's unusual for such an old source material to suddenly get a new anime series.
Absolutely. I guess that makes sense that's why a new studio, I think, could take it on, though, because it's material that has a popular backing to it already, and has a lot of faithful adaptation. So they could probably say, here, this is well-known, well-renowned. You already have that sort of backing of people that know the story, so they could adapt it, which I think was pretty interesting. And then I think it also should be noted, this was just something I found interesting, is Onihei in genre, it's historical and it is seinen. I don't watch a lot of seinen, so a lot of times when I was watching the show, I was like, whoa, this just feels really out of my league. And I was like, oh, it's because it's a seinen. I don't watch a lot of seinen shows, which are the more mature, typically generalized as like manly stories, more serious and adult than shonen, but kind of the evolution after shonen. So actually, John, I was also curious because I know that you covered your impressions of Onihei, but do you mind recapping what drew you to the series and pushed you to pass it?
I had actually not picked the series when we were first getting our picks, because I ended up actually giving Cassie a shorter list than she was hoping for of my choices for series to watch. And so she was kind of like looking through what else was available at the time and wasn't sure what to assign me, and saw Onihei, which I had previously overlooked, and she said it kind of reminded her of Kenshin, and asked me if I'd be interested in watching it all, to which I gave it another look, read it through again, and I was like, yeah, sure, it actually sounds kind of interesting. I don't know why I passed over it before. I didn't really have any expectations for it, but I was really surprised, both by the stuff that they were showing going on, like in episode 1, with the rather brutal torture scene.
Oh.
But how likable Onihei turns out to be, and it kind of ended up feeling like a... What era did I say it was?
It's Edo period.
Edo period, yeah. Edo period cop drama. And as I've compared things to Criminal Minds and NCIS in the past, I do like those kinds of series, and yeah, it ended up being a really neat twist on a series that, on a genre series I really enjoy. I say neat twist, but
Nice. I actually definitely, if we dive just talking about the story, I think it was really interesting to see this sort of narrative being told in 2017, where, you know, for the most part in the advent of anime, they're either set in the future or just typically modern day. You've got a lot of the fantasy world, like a really down to earth, like historical dramas, not what I expect to see out of these recent seasons. So that was honestly really refreshing for me.
And another thing that I actually find kind of refreshing about the series is that, this is sword and samurai era and fighting going on. It is not your over the top yelling attacks. This is my special skill, and drawn out sword clashes. These are accurate depictions of what sword fights in Japan, samurai sword fights, would have actually looked like.
Yeah, very true. A lot of the fighting in the show, from what I remember, is very kind of short, sweet, and to the point. And again, because this was like dealing with thieves and criminals and cops, it was really just like, we got to get the job done, son. So a lot of times, I found that something that recurred in the show was when Onihei himself and then the rest of Arson Theft Control went to go grab a criminal. They'd just be like, hey, this is Arson Theft Control, we're here. And then there's like maybe 2 minutes of fighting, and then he chops the guy down, and it's done. It's done. It's not even like any question. Which
it's
was
sort of like
interesting.
the gunfights that you see in like CSI and NCIS. It's just kicks the door down, stop, police, bam bam if you need to, and then it's done, because the fight, the battle isn't the draw of the series. It's how do we get the guy.
I feel like it should definitely be noted as well that this show is incredibly episodic. It's just very, 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 every single, and that was something that took used to for me, is that I kind of wanted an overarching narrative at first, and then within 3 episodes I was like, oh, okay, we're not going to get that. This is going to be literally every single episode. The only kind of overarching progression that I noticed is that there were a lot of episodes that focused on a certain criminal or individual that got led down the path of criminality or whatever, that maybe had some tie to Heizo Onihei before, and then he either helped them out or just by whatever circumstance, he ended up establishing a sort of like camaraderie with them, and then they would join his team. And so you'd see them come back in other episodes, like the criminal in the first episode you see throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, Onihei kind of like the scene right after the rather brutal torture scene I talked through, Onihei kind of sits down next to him and goes good cop on him and offers him some sake and just talks some shit with him. And yeah, they kind of come to understand each other a bit better, and that ultimately led to him joining Onihei's team and helping out.
So stories-wise, my thing with this show, and again, episodic nature, is that I did find some episodes to be pretty good, but I also found some to be very dry. So sometimes it was a little bit hard for me to get through the show, because if I wasn't invested in a certain episode story, it went by really slowly. And I think that for the stories that I wasn't invested in, it was because they had good narratives, but they seemed to be executed in kind of a dry way. Like, maybe I felt that I didn't have a good sense of the characters outside of, like, they are here to prove this point sort of deal. And it's like the morals here, but there's nothing, like, very unique about the way that they are telling this story. That was just me personally, though. Did you enjoy, for the most part, each of the episodes, or were there some you liked more than others?
There were definitely some episodes I enjoyed more than others, but for the most part, I pretty much enjoyed every episode to some extent.
I think my biggest complaint is just that outside of Onihei, I don't feel like any of the other cast really had much personality.
I can see that. I mean,
yeah.
some
It's one person I really liked. My favorite character is Usachu, who is this bumbling, naive kid who is part of the arson theft team, but he's like the copywriter and he like documents things basically.
He's the rookie that they don't really let do anything.
He's the rookie. He is the comedic relief of the series, but because of that, I really, really enjoyed his character. And I think on a whole, I tended to enjoy the more comedic characters for the most part. But yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, you had a good point. Some of the characters are a bit like, hey, this is them, this is their shtick, and
like his son.
Yeah,
really
he's like, hey,
much.
I'm gonna go training. No, you're not.
I was kind of bummed that, yeah, I feel like his character necessarily, I was hoping they'd do a lot with, and they kind of didn't. But oh well. But yeah, that was sometimes a little bit tricky for me, but I think I also had to realize, and maybe this is something about seinen as a whole, is that it's not necessarily as much about having like in-depth character relationships and involvement. It's like the moral of the story. And I guess especially because the show was episodic and dealt with a lot of like drama issues surrounding crime and morals and stuff, it was about the moral of the story more than anything else.
Yeah, there's part of me that was like, I would like a overarching story to be there, but I didn't, again, like with enjoying NCIS and CSI and Criminal Minds, I don't dislike the episodic nature of it either. So I, for the most part, I just enjoyed it for the ride, and I will say this now, if it was to get a second series, I would 100% be up for watching more of this, because it just was... It wasn't something I'd go out of my way to watch as every episode came out, but it would definitely be something that I would go back and watch more of if it was available. So,
did you have a favorite character in the show, do you think? And if you say Onihei, that's totally fine, because he's pretty much the best.
It kind of was just Onihei. I enjoyed the guy you mentioned then, whose name I've just completely... Usachu. I enjoyed Usachu pretty much for the same reasons that you said. I can't help but like the comic relief characters in the series. I just really liked how Onihei seemed to always have this air of knowing.
Very much so. Very, very much so. It was so fun to see him interact with other characters. Another one that was kind of comedic relief that I liked, and I won't go too big into details, but there's the episode where Onihei goes on I don't know, he's just out on some excursion, by himself,
Oh,
and he
yes.
encounters, like a shrewd old man who starts calling him boss and follows him around and is intent on, making comrades with him. And I loved that episode as well. I think that one was one of
that
the
was a good
stronger
episode.
episodes for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that episode.
That's quite an example of Onihei just like punking people and being on top of everything.
Yeah, he was like, for the most part, he was this upright, serious character, but then you had these moments where he was like, no, I'm just as much a jokester and prankster as anyone else. And that episode was certainly him going like, I am away from home, I don't have to be the face of my duty, I can cut loose and be as silly as I want.
I think those were my favorite moments. I think the first 3 episodes for me were maybe the toughest to get through, and I think it was because it was nothing but like drama, somber, and I was just like, I don't know. It was just tougher to get through for me. I'm also not a huge fan of brutal violence, so that when that would happen, I could handle it because I like knew it was coming. But I was like, it's just being violent again. But again, like you said, it's accurate to the time that it's depicting, which was really good. On that note, what did you think of the animation?
It is worth pointing out that this was a breakout studio, but I will say it doesn't really show, like, there's other studios' works out there that doesn't look as good as this. But there were times where the animation felt kind of stiff.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about why this was. And I think it's because if you was to pause this series at any point, each frame is drawn really well. The art is actually really well drawn, and so you could probably go through every single frame and every frame would look like an illustration, which is why the animation can sometimes feel stiff, because we've all seen like those pictures from a Disney movie of Armin falling off the horse in Attack on Titan and he's rolling along the floor, and you're just like, that's not how people work.
Yeah.
But the point is that you're not supposed to see these as individual frames. They are part of an animation. You're seeing the motion being stopped midway. You're supposed to see it as it flows, and if you was to watch that animation play out, it would be this gorgeous flowing animation and it would look natural, even though what you're actually seeing in each frame is certainly not natural how these bodies are moving, but it tricks your eye into seeing a more fluid, more natural movement.
I see.
And I think that's where the stiffness in Onihei's animation comes in, is that each frame is drawn so well that you don't get those more fluid motions.
I think what I appreciated the most about the art of Onihei was the backgrounds and the scenery. Was beautifully done. They played a whole lot with color palettes and lighting sorts of things, and put just a lot of like detail and delicacy into it. It was very creative. I think I mentioned this to a couple people who knew that I was watching the show at the time. I said the number one thing that I think the show is good for is crossover AMV footage fodder. Because if you need like any color scheme, any scenery of anything, you could pull it out of the backgrounds in this show like very quickly. The show also, I think, took a lot of time showing off a lot of just the like, oh, it's the town and it's snowing and whatnot or something. They did some like natural imagery metaphors that I liked.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that aspect of it. And while I appreciate the integrity of what the art is trying to do, and I do think at times it does look really, really pretty in execution, I also just, there were some times that I was like, this art is really janky to me. But I think actually that was less so in the art designs, but sometimes like the camera was really jittery. There were some scenes, like there was one where you have the view of the this person who's like walking in an alley sneaking up, and the camera jittering was so uneven, and it looked like a 14-year-old was messing around in like Premiere. And I was like, oh God, I think I pulled Get Over, and I was like, look at this camera movement right now.
Yeah, it did have moments like that, and I think that's attributed to inexperience of how to actually get it to move in a way that feels more natural.
For sure, and I think that they were ambitious, which I also think is good.
They were
I can
a bit
appreciate
ambitious
that a lot.
with this series, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have, I think, and I can appreciate that a whole lot. The character designs initially, I think, looked really good. The focus on, like, hyper-realistic facial features sometimes was a little weird to me. There were just, like, there were, like, bag lines under people's eyes and stuff, and, like, wrinkle marks and stuff. And what I gauged from that, though, with this show, and a lot of times when I was watching this show, I was like, why isn't this just a live action? Because I feel like this story could be portrayed better as a live action. Later did I find out it has had a live action movie, a stage play, and TV shows. So that makes a lot of sense. But sometimes I was just a little bit puzzled at what bringing this story into an anime adaptation really brought it. Like, what did having it as an anime transform beyond the like the films and the stage play and such? And I'm not really sure. Like, I almost wonder if it was if the TV and film adaptations were better or how they were. But if it's any consolation, that makes me kind of want to seek out and check out that other media based on the same source. So that's a good thing, I think. Music-wise, I like the music too. Was jazzy.
I really enjoyed the opening.
Yeah, the opening was really nice.
And it's like all traditional instruments as well, which kind of helps pull you into that period. Like, no, we're not going to have you listen to any modern rock or anything. No, you're going into the past and get your ass into gear.
Yeah, it was well tributed to the original source, which I can appreciate. What was the other thing in animation that bothered me? Oh, there were times that characters were speaking and their lip flaps and movements did not match to the words that they were speaking, and that pissed me off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, maybe I was just being, like, hyper picky or something, so who knows. And for a breakout studio, again, I appreciate that they were ambitious. They tried a lot of creative things. So while to me, they definitely could have done a lot of improved work, I can appreciate that effort. Also, I don't know their budget either, and different anime series have different budgets, so that can also play into the end quality.
There was definitely certain, like what we said earlier, there, for the most part, the fights were just like weird, like over in a short amount of times. There was a couple of episodes where they did have like a more
like involved fight, like in episode 1.
And like I think episode 3 was one of the first ones that was a more involved fight, and you can tell like they had a moment where like, right, okay, we need to focus a bit more of the budget on these scenes because it's a bit bigger a deal than maybe the fight scene we showed in the previous episode. So
yeah, they did do well, I think, of putting their budget in where it should count. Absolutely. That's a very good point. And then the opening too was very good. It was simplistic, like visually, but it worked with the tone of the show, and I appreciated that. Do you feel ready to go into ratings, or did we want to address anything more in the show itself?
The only other thing I wanted to mention was excuse me, Well, for the most part, it was a serious series. There was some comedy elements to it, but there was also certain serious elements, like darker things that they brought up. So if anyone does go to watch this series, do keep that in mind. But there was some scenes where I just really enjoyed seeing the villain getting their dues, and there was one moment where the bad guy tried to have his last laugh.
It literally did not get it.
And not only did he not get his last laugh, Onihei laughed in his face over it.
Exactly.
And I was sitting here laughing along, flipping the bird at the screen, going, "Yeah, fuck you, guy." Didn't go your way.
That was very, very good. Yeah, I think that I could go into overall ratings, and I've thought a lot about what I would give this show and things that I have to consider, where there were times that I was less engaged with the show. Actually, a habit I had with a lot of this show, sans for some of my favorite episodes, like the one focusing on Usachu and the one with the old man, there were a lot of times that I'd be watching and I'm like, oh, okay, it feels like we made a lot of progress so far. What time are we at? And I looked at the player and I was like, 15 minutes? It feels like I've been here for like 30 minutes already. But again, that probably has to do with my attention span, how I like shows to deliver things. This show is very serious in its delivery and gritty, which is not necessarily something that I usually watch. So while I think in my objective opinion, I was thinking of giving this show a skip it only because I can think of so many other shows that I would suggest within the same sort of subject and time thing that I think are more enjoyable. Like for me, I thought of like Samurai Champloo or like Sengoku Basara, or as Cassie mentioned, Kenshin. And I would suggest those to someone over this show. But at the same time, it's not really my style of show. And for whatever reason, maybe those other shows appeal to me more because they're prettier, or they have more comedy, or whatever, vice versa. So I think I will finalize my review for Onihei with a check it. Pretty much leaning on, if you really like seinen and you like historical period piece dramas, then definitely check this one out because it presents another series in that vein, and they are pretty hard to come by, and you may enjoy it a whole lot. I just think that there are others that you could exhaust before Onihei, personally. But yeah, it gets a check it. I'd say check it out if that's your thing.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And yeah, Cassie, when she recommended it to me, she had said it reminded her of Kenshin, and I, at the time, hadn't actually really seen any of Rurouni Kenshin, not properly. I'd seen the OVAs.
It's okay.
Okay. I have since found Rurouni Kenshin on Netflix and have been watching it. I still need to get back to finish watching it, admittedly. But I am on season 3 of that anyway. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, there are definitely better series out there for more of the same kind of stuff, but this is it is different from those series in that this is more of a as I mentioned before, it's more of like a cop drama. And so if you like those kinds of series, you will probably find a bit more enjoyment out of this than say someone who was like, oh, I want to see a shonen show with sword fighting.
Yeah.
This is not for you then.
Yeah.
Though if you have any interest in like seeing what a more accurate depiction of Edo era Japan was like, when it come to samurai and the like, then sure, give this a watch. It might give you a better idea of what it was actually like.
Yeah. So what does that translate to on our rating scale?
On a personal level, I want to give it a like it, but
Nice.
I can definitely see it as a hit and miss as to whether people will enjoy it. So I think best to give it a check it out and see what you think about it yourself, because
Okay.
yeah, I can see a lot of scenarios where people wouldn't like it.
I will also say I definitely think that's a fair rating to give. But I also noticed, because I peruse Mal forums when I watch a show, typically I enjoy reading what people thought of an episode after I finish it. And this show is really polarized. It's not that people hate it. Some people don't like it, but then other people love this show and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so underappreciated and it's like really, really good. One of the best of the winter season. So it definitely warrants at least a check. I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Check it out. It might not be your thing, but it might be your thing. So you won't really know until you give it a watch. And I do say watch 3 episodes, and if it's
I'd
really
say so.
definitely not your thing after 3 episodes, then fair enough.
If that's the case, just watch the episode with Usachu and you're set. I think that's like episode 7, maybe. But yeah.
And yeah, you can skip around and watch it in whatever order you want, really. And
That's true. Since
miss
it's
out on
episodic.
too much. You might have a moment of, okay, who's this person and where did they come from, because they were introduced in a previous episode, but yeah.
That was another thing. Sometimes I had a hard time keeping track of who people were because they didn't have like distinct enough character designs between them. Like all the women, I was like, which one is this? Is this his wife? Is this the like assassin chick? Is this like some other lady? But that's just a mild comment on that show. I think that our rating is pretty just. Give it a check out if you want to. And that being said, I think we are good to close out the episode. John, do you have any famous last words for our listeners?
I hope you all enjoyed watching, or listening rather, to this episode with just a pair of us.
Yes, thank you for your patience in listening to just the two of us. I hope we entertained you. Thank you, John, for dealing with me as a co-host. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to hear.
Awesome. Alrighty then, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.